Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Isaac Chase from, I'm not used to having these fucking lights in my face. Isaac from gunsforeveryone.com. Mostly what we focus on at Guns for Everyone is handguns and things like that, self-defense, concealed carry with a handgun, all that. But I do have plenty of experience with various rifle and accessories and things like that. And I had a change or upgrade to a couple of my accessories. And when I was doing my internet research on this stuff, I was having a hard time finding some of the following information. So I'm just going to go ahead and shoot a quick video to explain, well, it might not be quick, but explain the upgrades and the benefits and the drawbacks of these upgrades as well. These are the upgrades for a couple of suppressors that I have. The first one is the GEMTECH Trek. Now, this is the original GEMTECH. You cannot buy these new anymore. You might be able to find one hiding in somebody's gun broker account somewhere. But they do have an updated version, the GEMTECH Trek 2, which wouldn't need the upgrade that we're talking about here, but a lot of people do have this suppressor. And if you're thinking about modernizing it, that might be important for you. The other one is the AAC 762 SD, the original 30 cal suppressor from Advanced Armament. And this one, a lot of people have this one, and a lot of people are looking to upgrade some of the deficiencies with this suppressor. So I'm going to pan the camera down to talk about these differences so that we can get a good viewpoint with all the accessories, etc. So I'm going to pan this camera down here. All right, so first things first. The 762 SD. Original specs on the 762 SD were that this was a fucking huge suppressor and heavy suppressor. So those are the official specs for that. I'm just kidding. I'll update you on the specs, or I'll include those here. Original specs for this can were 9 inches long, 23 ounces, not light at all, and the ratchet system, which is here the 51T ratchet system. AAC went out of business, got purchased, and then reopened, I think, as an independent company. So they're back now, and they are offering a retrofit on this suppressor. The retrofit they offer is a removable end cap, updated removable end cap. Now, you do need a specific tool to take this off, and when you do the upgrade, the tool does not get included. That would be nice if they were to include that in the upgrade. Otherwise, you got to buy it separately. The other upgrade is to update the mounting system to, let's see if I can get this off. I don't think I can. To the new 1.375 by 24 hub mount, I believe. Looks like this now instead of like this. And you can direct thread. These come shipped with a direct thread adapter. So this is a 5/8 by 24 thread pattern here. And then it screws in, and just for demonstration purposes, this will now accept the industry standard hub mount. And the one that ships with a built-in muzzle brake, although if you're shooting next to this dude at the range, that is going to be uncomfortable, not fun. But it is there if you wanted to permanently attach, or not permanently, but attach this to one specific rifle. It's got the lugs on there if you wanted to tighten this down, time it, and all that stuff. But so this is what it ships with. What it can be outfitted with or added to is an adapter to take it from the hub mount to back to the 51T. And you're like, well, why did you just undo that if you wanted to do it again? Well, what this allows me to do is to still use all the 51T mounts that I have invested across a handful of different guns. Those things, depending on when you bought them, weren't cheap. I think at the height they were close to $200 a piece, which is a complete ripoff. But nowadays you can get them for $75, $80, $100, depending on the mount. And if you have bought this suppressor and you use this suppressor, you have probably purchased several of these mounts. So this allows you to use that mount across all of those, with also having the option to remove some of the weight and bulk of that and put it back into a hub mount. Or if you have a different thread adapters, if you have different QD adapters, you want to switch systems, you're not tied down to the 51T anymore. That's really the main part. You're not tied to the 51T. 51T was a pretty piss poor design initially, partially because there were two different metals, as I understood it, two different metals being used. In your ratchet system, there was a softer metal, and in the actual mount, which I have an example of here, was a harder metal. And so you put the suppressor on, take it off several times, and you start to get some slop and some play. Now they've re-engineered this design, and two things they've improved. One, it's more robust, it will last longer, and two, you get tighter lockup now with this. So when you place this on here, you're supposed to still push the button so that when you get to the point where it's tightening, you're not wearing out those teeth prematurely. But if you don't, this is what it sounds like, right? But you push it down until you start to get lockup, and then once you get some lockup, then you just crank it down and tighter. I'm not going to crank it all the way down because it's kind of a pain to remove with this flashlight at the moment. But that's how it works, and you can still use that. And once you get this thing off of here, you could swap this pretty easily across different platforms. So you get to keep the flexibility, or keep the system that you use, but now you gain the flexibility of taking this off and using this with whatever QD mounts you think are better. All right, so the way they do this, they cut out the serialized part of the suppressor, and then they re-weld on a new baffle design. So the new baffle design is the more modernized baffle design. I'm not real knowledgeable about baffle design, but I do see the work that they did, and in fact you could see the ridges on here. As far as I understand, this is done with a TIG welding machine, so these are not hand welds, this is a machine weld. They're not perfect welds, but they are, they're not bad. I do see a couple of start and stop points on these welds, like one right here specifically. I don't know if we can get that. There we go. So if we're talking about aesthetically, we do see some downgrade to the overall look of the suppressor, but I really don't care how the suppressor looks personally. I beat pretty hard on these things, and as long as it functions, and as long as these welds are strong, I don't have a problem with that. So let's talk about length and weight. Let's see. So new length on the suppressor without the 51T mount is 6.5 inches. So that's, we're losing 2.5 inches of length on the suppressor. Not bad. And then if we're going to go ahead and weigh this thing, let me turn this thing on. All right, so original weight on this was 23 ounces. Let's see what it is with the mount, 19.05 ounces. So not bad. But let's subtract the mount weight. Now I can't get this mount off, but I do happen to have another mount right here. And so let's go ahead and weigh this. 4.5. Now, to be fair, I do have to include some of the missing parts. So let's see, 19.05 minus 4.66. So that puts this suppressor down in the 15 ounce range, maybe even a little bit less. Now, if you want actual specs, I think this is pretty close to the new AAC Ranger 7. I don't think it's perfectly the same, but I think it's close enough. So you just look up the Ranger 7 without the mount and you get an idea. So we're knocking off a significant amount of weight on this suppressor, which is good because this thing was a real chunk prior to the retrofit. The other thing too, I'll say AAC's customer service used to suck major donkey balls. Since they have rebranded and started over, their new um, customer service has been excellent. I've talked to the tech guy over there, Josh, several times on the phone. I ordered a couple of these mounts. By the way, these are not cheap. If you buy them from AAC directly, they're $250, which is a lot of money for one of these. If you buy them from any other vendor, they run about $200. The problem is no other vendors typically have them in stock. So you're either stuck with waiting forever for them to come in stock, or to get on the AAC mailing list and wait for them to post it and then buy them. I ended up buying two because I was having this other suppressor retrofitted as well. So that's $500 just in mounts, or adapters, I should say. But you only need one per suppressor. And then I get to, like I said, reuse all my other mounts, 51T mounts that I've got. This one was shipped accidentally without the ratchet, and I talked to Josh on the phone, and he made sure that I got one of these within 24 hours. It was real fast. I'm not saying you will get it in 24 hours, but this is pretty simple. You know, it's a latch, a spring, and a pin, and so I haven't put it together yet. I haven't needed to yet, so that's why it's in pieces. Let's talk about cost for the retrofit. Cost for the retrofit is normally, I want to say $700, which is, that's a lot of money. The benefit is I don't have to wait for stamp approval on this, because we're just reusing the original serialized part for this. So the turnaround on this was a couple of weeks to get this work done on this. So if I'm weighing like, well, I could just buy another 30 caliber suppressor. Well, I don't use 30 caliber suppressors that much. I really only need one 30 caliber suppressor. If I needed two, then I would consider just buying the Ranger 7 or another suppressor and keeping this as is. For me personally, weighing this, also I got a discount. They were running a sale. I think it was a Black Friday sale for 25% off or 20% off or something like that. So I only ended up paying for the retrofit about $500, but then you got to factor in shipping both directions, insurance, waiting, all of that, having your suppressor floating around in the world without you. All of that considered, I think that this is not for everybody, but I chose to do it. I'm satisfied with what I got. Let's do measurements with the new length on here. So 8 inches, just under 8 inches. Whoops, just under 8 inches with the mount. So I do shave an inch off. I do shave off about 4 ounces of weight with this whole setup. And even if this ratchet can and does wear out, replacing this is something you can service yourself. You don't need to set it in for that. And it's something that can be done, in a couple of minutes with the right tools. So having a couple extra of these latches around in case you need them. So that is, and I've shot this thing now. It shoots fine. Really no changes in the sound signature that I could detect. I'm not using equipment to measure it, but I'm happy with this. So that is the AAC 762 SD to the new Ranger 7 retrofit. GEMTECH, the GEMTECH Trek. When this suppressor first came out, it was a very inexpensive 556 suppressor. This thing, I paid $300 for mine, plus the stamp. And this is originally was a direct thread suppressor, 1/2 by 28 for 556. Sound signature is fine. It's not awesome. This is not the quietest 556 suppressor, but when you're talking about 556, it doesn't, like the biggest sound is the sonic crack of the bullet, I think, in general. And I think that an economical 556 suppressor, I don't really care much what it sounds like as long as it works. This one, there's a company out of Colorado called ECCO Machine, ECCO Machine, and they will do a retrofit on this to do the same mount change on here, and they will do it for a lot cheaper. Now you're not getting the rebuild and the lightening of the weight and all of that with this, but the retrofit for just the hub mount on here is much cheaper. I think it's $190 plus a couple extras if you want them. You don't get the removable end cap, but economically, that's not a bad deal. So it comes back essentially the same size and weight as it was originally, but you get to get the flexibility with that. So for this, the work that was done on this was to cut off the direct thread mount and TIG weld on with the same type of machine, I'm sure, the hub mount. The weld on this looks a lot like the weld on this. So even though there are some, not so great welds, I can see on here a start and stop on here as well. It is what it is. Again, if you really care about that, you will see those welds on the suppressor. Now we have the hub mount, so that's where something like this can fit in. A direct thread hub mount can fit on this. But now I get to use this on here as well, and that means the suppressor that I originally only ever got to use really on one gun. Because if you think about a direct thread mount, if you want to swap these between rifles, that means you're swapping muzzle brakes or flash hiders on and off rifles, which is a real pain in the ass. And it's not something that I wanted to do. And so I pretty much married this to one gun and only ever used it on that one gun. Now I can put this adapter on there and I can swap this across a few different rifles that I have and use this, get a lot more use out of this. All right, so if we take off the 51T mount and we put on the new 1/2 by 28, because you can buy this with the retrofit. It does cost a little bit of money, but I mean, if you want to direct thread this to anything, you can buy this. To put this back on, this essentially gives us the original configuration of this suppressor. The original length of the Trek was 5.7 inches, and now it is 6 inches. So we're getting, 3/10 of an inch extra on the suppressor, and that's really right here where that hub mount needs to go on. And it needs to get longer because all of the hub QD mounts need to fit inside of this suppressor. They got to fit before they get to that first baffle. So that's why we're adding a little extra length on here so we can maintain that. So it's now 6 inches long. If we throw this on the scale, the original weight on this was 17.5 ounces, and so we're at 16.8 plus this 19.58. So we've gained a couple of ounces in weight if you use this. And I'm not going to use that, but I'm going to use this. So we've added 4 ounces to the weight of this. 4 ounces is not nothing when you're talking about a suppressor. All that weight out there at the end of your barrel is definitely going to add some fatigue and things like that. It's weird, I'll say, that this thing feels like it weighs more, just like this, than when I shipped it. But if we look at the scale, it doesn't weigh more. It weighs just a bit less, about a 1/2 ounce less. It's kind of weird. The other thing that ECCO Machine does is they'll refinish the suppressor. That's included in the retrofit. That is, a nice Cerakote on here. I will probably end up painting this at some point anyway because I paint my rifles from time to time, and this thing's going to get some paint on it probably. I don't really care again, but if he's going to go ahead and throw a finish on there, I might as well have him put on FDE because it's FDE. Taliban Tan is my industry standard. So now that this is on here, I don't have the ratchet built or on here yet, but we'll go ahead and now I did hear from AAC that it's recommended that you put on some white lithium grease on this to make sure that you don't get a carbon lock on here. And I've had carbon lock on another suppressor, and it is a huge pain in the ass because without the right tools, you pretty much have to send it in. All right, so we've got that on there. Throw that on, and now we've got our suppressor. So we add a little bit of length, we add a little bit of weight, but now I can use this on really 4 or 5 of the other rifles that I would want to use this on, including my 22, which is a lot of fun shooting suppressed 22, and this makes that easy to do now. I do have a dedicated 22 suppressor, but it pretty much lives on one of my rifles. So that's the GEMTECH, and yeah, I love this suppressor because it was such a good value. Adding all this other stuff in to it, I think lengthens the life and usability of this suppressor, and so I'm satisfied with that. But just doing this because it's available, you really have to think about whether or not you actually need or want all of these extra benefits to this. So that's all I can think of that I wanted to include on this about these two suppressors. Get a 5.56 suppressor. If you shoot 5.56, get a suppressor. You will not regret it. It is probably one of the most useful tools I have ever purchased across all of my firearm purchases. I do have a suppressor that I kind of regret buying, and that is my 45 caliber suppressor. This is another AAC. This is the Tyrant 45. It's not that it doesn't work. It works great. This is a 45 caliber PCC. The problem is like, what do you really use this thing for that you wouldn't use a 9mm for? I have a 9mm suppressor. I use it a lot. This one is just like, you buy it and then you need to find a reason. Put it on a handgun, you instantly realize what a waste of money that is, because it's such a pain in the ass to shoot a 9mm or a 45 handgun with this huge suppressor on here. Buy a PCC just because you can shoot 45 through it. That's money that could be spent on a lot of other things instead. So I have this. It works well. It's quiet. It's just kind of a toy, not really that useful. And, but this, there has not been a single moment where I regretted this. This was the best purchase I think I've made across most of my firearms and accessories. So get yourself a 5.56. It doesn't have to be a GEMTECH, obviously, but you will definitely not regret it. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Check out gunsforeveryone.com, free concealed carry classes across Colorado and beyond. And we will catch you guys next time.